All right, so we're live.
Mm,
Okay,
yep,
you got it?
yes.
Okay, so welcome everyone to our live. Um, my name is Lana Leguía, and that's Vic Kaplan. We're both libertarian candidates running in the state of New Jersey. Vic Kaplan is running for governor, and I'm running for District 24 State Assembly. We're going to try to go live every day and just talk about different things. It's very casual. If you guys have any questions for us, if you guys want to be a guest, just let me know and I'll send you the link. Or you can just request to be a guest on TikTok because we're also live on TikTok. But other than that, we're just going to sit here and chat about a couple of things. So, how are you, Vic?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you. It's a real pleasure meeting up this Sunday evening. Couldn't be better.
Yeah. It's about to rain where I am, which I'm not really looking forward to because I still have a couple of puppies, and every time they're outside in the rain, they are just absolutely filthy and make everything filthy. But that'll be all right. So, a couple of things that happened in the last couple of weeks I would like to know your opinion on because I don't think we've talked about it before, and that is the possibility of alligator Alcatraz being shut down due to what they're claiming to be damage to the Everglades, the Native American tribe. And I'm not going to try to pronounce the tribe because I don't want to mess it up. But the local Native American tribe is fighting for that the protecting that land. So, what are your thoughts on that? The judge making that order.
Right. So yeah, no, my attitude towards the alligator Alcatraz location is such that I basically think that first of all that there's no due process being followed when it comes to the actual use of the facility for the purposes of holding up undocumented immigrants, and that of course I oppose that on the basis of certainly natural rights of individuals and on the basis of course of the U.S. Constitution, which does not grant the power to the federal government uh, to control immigration under Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. But I do support natural rights, and I certainly really looking at the way that people are being handled in that location, how they're not being given enough food, and the fact that they're being placed in these horrific conditions. Yeah, I certainly do hope that that place would be shut down. Absolutely, 100%. There is a much better way to deal with immigration than just arresting people without due process and holding up them, in that facility. So yeah, I certainly hope that that place will be shut down. My view always has been that people are not violent. They're not, if they work, they pay taxes, and this is certainly a topic that I can talk more about. Immigrants, regardless of their status, do pay taxes. Um, that
So,
people should.
so you hope it shuts down, but do you think it will, based on their logic and reasoning?
I'm having a really hard time. I think that what is more likely to happen that the federal government will challenge the decision, that decision, and I think it probably would stay open. I can only assume, but I could be wrong. But it likely that the alligator Alcatraz location will stay open. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Maybe they'll just pick a different location also.
Yeah,
And,
they just-
maybe we'll have to do this a
yeah.
thousand times before they stop.
Oh, absolutely. Like if they shut down the Guantanamo somehow, and Guantanamo, of course, was never shut down. If you remember, well, any people do listen do remember that Barack Obama ran with the idea of that Guantanamo should be shut down, and then of course it never was, and it's still there. And of course, then Donald Trump came up with a wonderful idea. Rather than holding people who were suspected of terrorism, then just use that facility to hold people who are undocumented immigrants. So so which goes to show you that there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, just like ICE.
Hmm. And the other thing that was kind of announced in the last week or so is Gavin Newsom potentially
Hmm.
trying to run in 2028. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So as far as
I'm not
Gavin,
a fan of Gavin Newsom.
I'm not a fan of Gavin Newsom either. I think he's done a great job. Well, great job. He certainly has been trolling Donald Trump, especially that recent picture he had Donald Trump right next to the Soviet flag. I I found that to be quite fascinating. Um, right, what did they call the Communist Republic of America, right? I mean, I thought that was hilarious next to the Soviet flag. And of course, as someone who has seen I guess a Soviet flag many times when I was a child, I found that comparison quite interesting. Of course, how can anyone really criticize the Democrats on anything when you have the federal government buying 10% of the share of Intel, and so you definitely see Gavin Newsom trolling Donald Trump. I do find it fascinating, and it is hilarious, of course. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just having a hard time seeing how with the record of Gavin Newsom in California that he would be considered a great choice as a nominee of the Democratic Party for president. I'm just really having a hard time seeing that. But maybe after next year, if our economy collapses, perhaps for a whole bunch of people, Gavin Newsom would seem like a better alternative than Donald Trump. So now that Donald Trump is planning to run for another term, but I guess that all depends on the kind of a condition we're going to become. 2028. That's for sure.
By the way, shout out to Lee here. Lee has a political consultant business, and he's great if you need help with signatures, if you need help with fundraising. He's a nice dude. I like him, and he does a great job. So if anyone is running for office, pretty much anywhere in the country, and you need help with stuff, I would recommend Lee and his consulting company.
Yeah. Shout out to Lee again. Yes.
Yeah.
Lee Evans is great. Yeah. Thank you for that, Lana. Absolutely. So yeah. Like I said, Gavin Newsom is an interesting choice. I mean, he's definitely telegenic, and I guess for the people that not that it's completely irrelevant, but yeah, I think that he's. I mean, he is an interesting choice. I would have never considered him as sort of a kind of my number one pick as the likely Democratic nominee, but I think that looks like he's really getting into the game early, based on
Mhm.
activism. So yeah, I think it's a definite possibility. Although I do think that the probably would not be the strongest candidate as far as the Republican criticism is concerned, because they can always point to California, to people leaving the state of California, and other things that took place during his governorship. So, but I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, we've seen stranger things happen so in the past. But if I could just talk about something that I thought about this morning, and as I was reading about the ICE raids in New Jersey, in Edison, New Jersey, where there was I guess a storage facility where a number of people were being arrested, and there were a number of people who were who had documents, and then they were let go, because so this seems to be an operation when it comes to the federal government of sort of arrest a whole bunch of people and find out if any of them are don't have documents with them. But to me, the when it comes to immigration, when it comes to everything else, when it comes to tariffs, all of these are examples of central planning, and so that is what I see happen, and I don't think that too many people see it that way. There are certainly people who do see it when it comes to certain topics, but not when it comes to immigration. But this is really no different. I mean, the idea behind these arrests is that, well, you have to have 3,000 arrests per day, right? So, but that is an example of central planning, and um, the consequences of central planning, whether it's the Soviet Union or the United States with the Federal Reserve, or when it comes to China, when the government decided to eliminate all the sparrows, and that led to starvation. The consequences of central planning are horrific, because the reality is that our economy, just like the natural worlds of sparrows is interconnected, the economy is interconnected as well. People are undocumented immigrants. They pay taxes. They are consumers. They're producers. And so when you eliminate one group of people, that affects everyone. And I don't think this is something that has dawned upon people who support these deportations. Number one, they're basically supporting central planning, no different than the central planning in the Soviet Union that led to this scarcity of goods, and no different than central planning in China. They may not think it that way, but the reality is that they all support central planning. And so that's
Yeah. I used to live in Edison when I first moved to New Jersey. That was the first city I lived in, and or town. And Edison has a huge Indian population, Indian immigrant population. Uh, I don't know the exact statistics. I don't remember, and they could have changed since almost 10 years ago that I lived there. Um, but if you were to just get rid of all the immigrants from Edison, I mean that small little economy would probably collapse. Like the amount of businesses those people own and the houses that they've bought and all these things that they've contributed to the local economy there, on top of being council members and mayors and on the school board, like it would absolutely destroy that town. And then in doing that, it would ripple out into the other towns. New Jersey specifically is full of immigrants, so I don't get New Jersey specific being so anti-immigrant. And as far as central planning, a lot of these MAGA types, I really should buy something for my phone because it keeps falling. A lot of these MAGA types, claim to be against socialism, claim to be against a centralized government, claim to be against communism, but I don't think they know what either of those things are. I don't even think they could officially define them. As annoying as it is when I talk to communists and the first thing, or debate them, the first thing they say is, "Well, define communism." I find it annoying, but they do it for a reason, because if you can't actually define what it is that you hate, you can't um, you can't point it out when it's like right in front of your face. And that's the problem with a lot of these people, is that they've just been conditioned to hate socialism and hate communism, but they don't actually know what it looks like. They don't know what it is when it's right there in front of their face. So when it is, like in the case of being anti-immigration, they don't realize that it's incredibly socialist to allow a centralized state, the federal government, to control immigration in that way.
right. No, you're absolutely right, Lana. And yeah, I mean, the reality, of course, is that the rates against the immigrants, that is central planning, and that is, of course, there's no consideration for the consequence of that. I mean, taking the human component aside, and because I know what people are going to say that support these deportations. Well, they came here, they're undocumented, this, and that. But leaving the natural rights aside argument and the U.S. Constitution and all that, I don't think that the people who support these policies understand the consequences of these policies on the rest of the population. Just like people that thought that eliminating sparrows would be a great idea. Well, what could possibly go wrong? But you can see definitely one or two steps ahead that this is gonna have negative consequences, right? In China, if somebody had suggested that to someone who can understand cause and effect, they would have said right away, well, these are going to be the negative consequences. And just like with getting rid of a large number of people that contribute to the economy, again, leaving the human component aside and breaking up families and leaving children without their parents, leaving all that aside, which I know there's a whole bunch of people who support these policies don't care about. The reality is that these policies do lead to negative consequences. It does impact our economy, right? Fewer customers, fewer consumers means then people that sell their products, right? The producers, right? They lose money, they lose profit. When you have fewer producers, then the people that service customers, right? So they're being impacted. Everything is being interconnected, just like the natural world.
So I do have a couple of questions on
Sure.
TikTok.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're just joining, we are both live on X, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. So that's why it looks a little weird. So hopefully soon, when Vic's profile gets the ability, because TikTok is very weird about live, we can do a dual hosting live on TikTok. So hopefully you can hear what he's saying on TikTok. But if you want to be a guest, you can just request it on any of the platforms, and of course, leave your questions. To answer Philip's question here, when is the vote in New Jersey? I mean, both our names are going to be on the ballot in the general election in November. I'm running for District 24, which is the Northwest District of New Jersey, bordering Pennsylvania and New York, and Vic Kaplan is going to be on the ballot for governor. So we're both going to be on the ballot in a couple of months. Oh, you can hear Vic, so that's good. So the question on TikTok is, what do we think about Mikey Sherrill wanting to freeze utility bills for everyone? We actually talked about this last week, and Vic, if you wanna say what you said last week.
Well, yeah, no, I absolutely. So, of course, this is going to lead to actual less energy, because whenever you have price control, that leads to the scarcity of energy, of anything that the price control is being placed upon. So the solution is to have more choices, right? Allow the consumers to choose among the different energy providers, as opposed to having one company or having the monopoly on energy. That is the problem. The inability of the consumers to choose, when you have the state government basically saying, well, this is the company, right? They have the monopoly on providing energy, and no wonder then when customers don't have a choice, this is what they're dealing with. So that's my view on it, Lana. But you can definitely elaborate more on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I agree with you, and people want her to do that, or encouraging, these freezes of prices. And we talk about this with rent control. First of all, it fails every time; it doesn't work. But the reason why people are asking governments to do this is because they're feeling the effects of federal inflation. They're feeling the effects of things being just costing too much money, and it's a burden on everyone, especially in New Jersey, where we have the highest property tax in the country, one of the highest income taxes. There's toll roads, there's a water tax, there's a gas tax, there's an exit tax. Like, we are taxed more in this state than any other state. So on top of that, there's inflation and things costing too much, and people, they want some sort of reprieve, and they want to know that, like, something is um, going to be consistent. Like, they know their utility bill is only going to be whatever it is, $100 or whatever, instead of maybe getting a utility bill of $1,500, which some people have had. But it doesn't work. And the way the government, the state government, or local governments could actually help people keep more of their money, and kind of not necessarily fix inflation, because you can't really fix federal inflation on a state level, but kind of lift some of that burden, is repealing some of these taxes that we have in the state. That would do more than freezing utility bills, or rental costs, or whatever.
Right. Then, I absolutely agree with that. So yeah, I mean, you could see the same thing when it came to auto insurance. So when it came to auto insurance before 1998, I believe the New Jersey, there was really no choice, right? So there were no choices that people could have when it came to auto insurance, right? You couldn't choose from a variety of different policies, different auto insurance companies, and then they could choose, right? So now they can choose, and that's because the legislature voted to make it possible. Yeah, and now people can choose the policies that are best for them. They can choose the policy that's more affordable for them when it comes to auto insurance. There's no reason why it shouldn't be done, it cannot be done, or it shouldn't be done when it comes to energy. I definitely think it should be done when it comes to energy. People should have choices. I mean, this is what people say America is supposed to be all about. New Jersey, right? You should have the freedom to choose, right? So, I mean, if you had lived in a communist country, you would understand what it means when when the state denies you choices, when you can only pick, one or two kinds of cheese.
And
there's
you have lived in a communist country.
Yes, yes. So I know exactly. I know exactly what it's like to live in that kind of a society. I have seen it. I remember as a child, I stood in the line for bread for like 2 hours. I do remember that. That's not a good system. Okay, that is not a good system. Um, that's
And we have this conversation, or we had this conversation years ago, um, when people were asking to make internet something that was provided by the state. And there was this huge conversation, but it boils down to the same thing: is that if the state is providing a service, and the only service, when they do a poor job of that service, there's nothing you can do about it. So I've changed internet services several times because their customer service was bad. They kept raising the prices. Um, every time someone sends me a notification, my phone vibrates and it falls off. I need to get my stand working. Um, Same thing with trash or other utilities. The provider does a bad job, you cancel your contract, you find another one. But if it's being provided by the state and there's only one option, you have no choice. They can do a terrible job, which, for example, the federal government, um, does a terrible job, and there's nothing we can do about it because they're the only option when it comes to certain social programs or services. So I wouldn't want that when it came to my utilities or trash or internet or electricity. I would want the ability to pick the provider that works best for me or works with my budget or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely, Lana. I definitely agree with you. People should have choices. Imagine going to a store and turning that what exists in the Soviet Union into what we have here in the United States. Imagine just going to a store and like, oh, where did all these products go? Well, they no longer, we no longer have them. It's all it's yeah, that would be a crazy world, of course. And yeah, people absolutely freedom to choose. People should have that opportunity in the United States because. When it comes to everything, because when you only have kind of a one choice, that's not a choice at all. It can be a crappy choice, and you there you can't choose, quote unquote, by definition anything else, and that would really not serve anyone, but except for the, I guess, for the state that would have the monopoly and not allow anyone else to provide choices in any kind of legal way. So.
So if you guys are just joining, we're live on X, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, but we're live on our separate TikTok accounts. And the reason for that, instead of just co-hosting one TikTok, which is why you can't see Vic on my screen and you can't see me on his screen, is because TikTok has certain guidelines of how long your account has to exist, how many followers you have, and how many times you have to go live before you have the feature to co-host or add guests. And I think today will be the last time Vic will have to go live before he meets that threshold. So tomorrow night when we go live at 7, we'll be able to go live on the same TikTok account or co-host a live. So we did have a question on TikTok. Let me just open this up. So do we think Mikey Sherrill is going to win? She's down 13 points to 7 and 6. I think I read that wrong. But anyways, do you think that Mikey Sherrill is going to, because she is polling poorly?
Mikey Sherrill is polling poorly. Well, that is one. Well, the Rutgers Eagles.
Well, I get you have to define what poorly is, but she's polling. She's polling, not as she should. I guess I should say.
Well, I mean, 9 points, yeah, right. 9 points. She's 9 points ahead. I think that the Rutgers Eagleton poll, the latest poll, had her 9 points ahead. I think that certainly in New Jersey we have had a trend where I think, with the exception of 2021, and I think 2021 was really, I think part of it was a referendum on COVID lockdowns in New Jersey. Since 1989, since 1989, the governor that was elected every single time, with the exception of 2021, was the candidate of the party that was not in control of the White House, right? So pretty much every 4 years we have a referendum on the party in the White House, and because this time around the president is a Republican, yes, so the expectation would be that there would be a Democratic governor. She is 9 points ahead in the latest Eagleton poll among likely voters. I'm not going to predict what's going to happen. I'm not going to be betting money on it, but that has been the trend. It's also true that we haven't had in New Jersey one party controlling the governorship for more than 2 terms. So that's another sort of I guess trend, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be broken, right? So so I don't really care who's going to win and who's going to lose, because I'm running on a platform that is very different from the platform of Jack Ciattarelli or Mikey Sherrill. If you look at where I stand on issues, I certainly oppose central planning, and the difference is that the other two do. They support central planning. And I think after having lived in the communist country, I think I can speak to my personal experience why central planning is a bad idea, not just all the historical examples I can come up with. So I do think that I'm a better candidate than the other two, because I can speak from my personal experience why central planning is a bad idea, and I can certainly give plenty of examples, whether it's immigration or any other topic, or energy, why central planning is a terrible idea, and why we need to have a better option. I mean, we've had Republican and Democratic governors before. More people have left New Jersey. The cost of living has been increasing. More and more people can't afford living in New Jersey, and regardless of whether the Republicans were in power, or the Democrats. So it doesn't. None of that seems to matter. And so,
Yeah, and people are conditioned to believe that when things are bad, it must be whoever's not in power at the time. Like Lee had commented when we were talking about immigration that Obama had also deported many people. But they don't point that out because right now things are bad because Trump is deporting, millions of people or whatever, or trying to. And they do the same thing in New Jersey. Oh, if we just elect Jack, the Republican, everything will be better. But the truth is that no matter who you elect from the two parties, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, literally nothing changes. Things get worse. They reinforce their power. So if you really want to see a different solution and different options, then you have to start voting differently, right? And but as far as whether she's going to win or not, as far as my opinion, like you said, Vic, I don't care, because to me it doesn't matter if she wins or if Jack wins. They're both bad options to me. Both of them being either of them being elected is not going to change anything for me as a resident of New Jersey and of Sussex County. Things are going to be just as bad. So to me, it actually doesn't matter, really. We should be voting for one of the independents, which my vote, Vic, you have my vote, so that's good.
Yeah, no, Lana, I absolutely agree, and yeah, thank you for those kinds of words. Absolutely. I mean, that things have not done better. We've had, people thinking that next time is going to be different. You're just going to, vote Republican. Things are going to change. They're going to vote Democrat. Things change. Things don't change. Things get worse. But then again, a lot of those people, not a lot, but a number of those people don't really care whether things change or not. They just want the party they support in power, regardless of what happens. And so there are going to be people who are going to say, well, Republicans are in power, so I don't really care what's going on. I don't really care what's going to happen. And then the Democrats say, well, my party is in power, so I guess I don't care about anything else. And that's what has been really the trend with a number of people. They just don't care. They just want their party in power. They're not really as interested as much as things getting better, because things don't get better. Objectively speaking, they get worse, and they still keep voting the same way, hoping the next time will be different. But then again, those people are not really invested, not really interested in seeing things that do change. They only care about their side, right? Their team being in power and nothing else. Instead of wanting things to change and supporting candidates that would advocate for policy that would bring real change to the people of New Jersey. Policies like affordable housing without raising taxes, right? Changing some of those zoning restrictions to allow people to live in affordable housing, like tiny homes that you can't have in New Jersey, or smaller houses that have no impact fees, which are taxes on smaller houses, or even allowing people to live in RVs, right? We have more and more homeless people every year. So why can't we have use some of the abandoned commercial and residential houses, buildings being used to house the homeless? So none of those candidates address those issues. I'm the only candidate who's running on a platform to gradually work to repeal the state income tax and replace it with user fees, which will be paying for the service that you use, kind of like the toll roads. So none of them running on any platform similar to mine. And so I don't really care if either one or the other wins. Okay. The reality is that the question is for the people of New Jersey: will you win? Will you win by having any one of the other two getting elected? And that's the real question, because we've seen what happened. With Republican, Democratic governors, cost of living keeps increasing. More people can't afford living in New Jersey. People feel like they're being taxed out of their livelihoods, and they all leave New Jersey, regardless whether we have Republican or Democratic governors.
Yes, and Republicans and Democrats will run on something that sounds good or sounds like it's part of their platform. Like a lot of people who are registered Republican or consider themselves Republican are Republicans because they support smaller governments and lower taxes and are pro 2A. That's the top three things that I hear. There are other reasons, but sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. But when they get into office, they do none of these things. Like I believe Jack has lowering taxes on his platform, but his plan only includes like lowering it by 1% or something. And in my district, people get into office that are Republicans. Particularly, this is the only Republican area in the state, and they don't do anything to make it easier to get a gun or to get your license to own a gun or any of those things. Just like Trump got into office and he didn't get rid of federal power, he actually made it more bloated by making the federal government and ICE bigger. So they run in these platform positions and they don't actually mean it. We do have a question here on my TikTok here. Would you repeal 5756 and empower parents in schools again? I don't know what that bill specifically is, but I'm assuming it has something to do with school choice or parents being able to choose what schools their kids go to. If that's what it is, you can let me know. And yes, I would support repealing anything that doesn't allow parents to pick the education for their kids.
Yes, thank you, Lana. Yeah, absolutely. I as well would support certainly allowing parents to choose to send their kids to any schools of their choosing, whether it's public schools, private schools, and definitely allowing the homeschooling. Definitely allowing the parents to send their kids to public schools across municipal
I'm
lines.
actually going to look it up really quick.
Sure.
Um, Actually, I can't without leaving the.
I know there's also a comment about localism. Absolutely, you have local governments choosing what I believe it was in Asbury Park. They decided to I believe it was increase the speed limit, and so I absolutely believe in the support the power of local governments to make their local decisions, and because for me,
Okay. I just looked up 5756. It has nothing to do with school choice, but transgender students. Um, so basically, the school would accept the kids the student's gender identity and would not inform the parents of such change. If you can answer that question, and I'm going to try to silence my dog that's barking in the background.
sure. Well, I would hope that the parents. So regarding that topic, whether the parents should be informed, that I would hope that the parents would be informed of that, but it's not. Um, how should I put this? Yes, I would certainly would want the parents to be informed if a child were to make that decision, that should be kept a secret. But so yes, that definitely would be my position when it comes to that. Um, but the thing is this, okay? That's my personal preference, just to be clear. I do first of all, I do support local control of schools, and I don't believe there should be a state curriculum when it comes to public schools in New Jersey. Right, so I think schools at a local level. That's why I would not want to have a state government have anything to do when it comes to education itself. Right, so because I would not favor state control over schools, public schools. The that is the control of the state governments, and I would want the local control over schools and local governments making those decisions. If the schools are not being funded by tax dollars throughout the state, and that's what I would support. Allowing local governments to fund their schools with the abolition of the state income tax, that would be the goal. Then the local government should be making their own decisions regarding that. So if the taxpayers throughout the state of New Jersey are not funding local public schools in New Jersey, I don't see why the state government should be involved in making in having that type of legislation. But to the extent that it does right now, yes, I would support having the parents being informed of their child's identification. Yes.
Yeah, and I didn't hear the first part, obviously, because I left, but I think we agree on this. And
Yeah,
also, it looks like this is this a state? This is state legislation, right?
it's a state legislation, right? Yeah, it's a state
Yes.
legislation.
So if that's the case, then the state shouldn't be making any legislation about this at all. It should be up to um, the, like you said, the local governments or the local school boards. But when it comes to gender dysphoria and gender identity, if a child is struggling, regardless of their gender identity or what they're struggling with, if they're struggling with something emotionally, psychologically, physically, whatever, in school, I do think that um, school administrators and teachers have the obligation to go to the parents and say, hey, your child is struggling with this. We need to talk about this, about how we and you as a team can help your child get through this in a positive way. So to me, the idea that you're not going to alert the parents of things that are going on with your child while they're at school is irresponsible to me. But hopefully, schools do it in such a way that it's a positive experience for the child. I understand that there's some parents that will hear that and go, "No, not my kid," and espouse these bigoted ideas about it. But times are changing, and hopefully that will as well. But the idea that you're just going to not tell the parents what is going on with their child while they're at school is irresponsible to me, and it shouldn't be something that the state should be legislating to begin with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of consider so like personally, my own personal. So yeah, the first part, Lana, that I said this, that my personal preference would be that they do inform them. At the same time, should the state be legislating it? Like, yes, I think that the issue is that I may have a personal preference when it comes to this, but if there's a local control over schools when it comes to state government, and that is what I do support, local control, and that there would be that I certainly wouldn't support such a legislation, given that I support getting rid of the state control of the local public schools. And because of that, I think that parents should be able to send their kids to schools that would reflect their own values. And so then if the schools that they send their kids to, they whatever policy they have, those would be the policy they would be um, enforcing. But should there be like a one size fits all solution coming from the state government telling local schools that you should be doing this and you should be doing that? Yeah, I even though personally I think they I can see why the parents may want to be informed about this. I don't really see the now that I think more about this, I really don't see the why the state government should be involved in that. I don't
Yeah,
think
I mean, I would hope that if I had children, that my children would feel comfortable enough to not hide that from me to begin with. But sometimes kids are shy or they're afraid of judgment or whatever, and then so they go to their teachers. But I do think, I was homeschooled, but the couple of times I did go to public school and there was something going on like bullying or something like that, because I was a homeschooler who was the new kid at school when I did go to public school for weeks at a time or whatever. My parents were informed of those things. So why would it be any different for anything else?
Well,
Um,
I think the concern is that, yeah, like, and I can totally see the concern that some people may have, like if the parents may have a negative reaction towards that, and so like to protect. And I understand the argument from that side. You want to protect the child from the parents in the sense that that child might feel like he or she would be treated differently or with any kind of because of that the parents
well,
would give.
that is a concern, but
I totally,
you could say the same thing about bullying, because you could tell a parent that your child is being bullied and they will say, "Oh, that's how you build character." Well, no, it isn't. It could damage them permanently, right? So you can say that about anything that happens to a kid, that a parent could have a negative, bigoted, or incorrect reaction to something that's happening to your kid in school. And I've had a lot of people say that bullying builds character, that bullying should come back. We need to bully more
well,
people.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, like that movie, The Boy Erased. Now that had to do with the sexual orientation of a person. Of course, the book was written and the movie was made about that. Certainly, when you had the father having a very negative reaction to his child, coming out, and that's to his son coming out, and I totally understand that aspect of it. So now that I'm thinking more about it, like should there really be a state law when it comes to that? That's the it, to me that's really going too far in my opinion. But I think
So
that
we do have somebody
local governments
requesting
should be
to
making those
be a
decisions.
guest.
Yeah, so go ahead. Mhm.
We do have someone on TikTok requesting to be a guest. And just for everyone's knowledge, I do limit how long guests are on the live, especially if you're joining to debate or just to do that. We can only do that for so long. We can only go in circles for so long. So I'm going to try to limit each guest to about 10 minutes. Hopefully, my viewers did say that you can hear Vic. So if you have questions while you're a guest, we'll both try to answer them, or Vic will answer them. It's just a little weird right now because we're not on this same screen for right now.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Vic, can you hear him?
Yes.
And can you hear Vic?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right. So did you have...
Wonderful.
Oh, I think you froze.
Oh no.
Oh
Okay.
no, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. That should stay. So are you the person I'm debating, or is he?
I guess both of us. It's not necessarily a debate, but if you have questions, or like if you disagree with something we've said, we can both comment on it if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Mhm.
So I guess we can start with the topic at hand, which is, I presume, allowing trans kids to ask their teachers to confidentially refer to them as a name that they like to, and not be at risk of, like, that being released to parents that may not be safe. So you said that could be true of everything. It really can't. So, like, the comparison you made between bullying and outing someone as trans, surely you can see how there isn't, like, a systemic, historical, and cultural context of bullying people that are being bullied as parents. But there is a context of that, of bullying and bigotry and abuse against trans people.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with that. There's a historical precedence for that. Trans people specifically being marginalized are trans kids being bullied. But the topic is not necessarily whether that's true or not. The topic is whether parents should be informed of whether their kids are questioning their gender identity or not. That's what the topic is. And
so the comparison you made, there's an important distinction, because the risk of outing a child as being bullied, right, to parents, as opposed to outing them as trans, is fundamentally different in the society we live in, because we don't have ideologies and historical precedents for abusing and attacking people who are bullied, but we do for trans. So do you see why maybe we need protection for one and not the other?
Right. So, but the topic is, does the state, because I don't know if you were there when the question was asked about the New Jersey bill, actually the state legislating whether schools have the right to do that or not, and they don't. The state shouldn't have the authority to legislate something like that, and parents do have the right to know what's going on with their kids. Vic, do you have something?
By the state, right? Either they have the legal state right, or the teachers have the right to not. That is still state intervention on either side.
No, so if I'm saying that there shouldn't be a legislation, period, and that schools should feel the responsibility to alert the parents. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying the state should legislate schools to force parents to tell them, and I'm not saying they should legislate to tell them not to tell them. There shouldn't be legislation about it, period. But as school administrators, you should feel an obligation and responsibility to let parents know what's going on with their children.
Okay, so you believe that it's a good thing, but the state shouldn't be telling their own employees what the policy is. Those own employees, the state employees, should be deciding for themselves.
Well, so I think what you don't understand is, because we're both libertarian candidates, and the libertarian philosophy is that teachers shouldn't be state employees, period. That
you don't believe in public education?
I don't believe that education should be legislated by the federal government or the state government.
You don't believe in public? So that's public education,
right?
Do you believe education should be entirely private?
Yes, actually, yeah, I do.
Okay, so you don't think society has an obligation to, like, this actually doesn't make sense with free market capitalism. So, for example, what should we do with orphans? Should they be educated by the state?
They can be educated by their community. People can take responsibility for them. Churches, organizations, charities can take charge of their education and care.
So you don't think that, like, as a nation or as a state, you have an obligation to your citizens to provide them base subsistence?
No, the state has no obligation to take care of its citizens. I don't believe that, no.
Really, including children. What is the justification for that?
Go ahead, Vic.
No, could I just chime in? So I mean, as far as I know the current New Jersey Constitution, it does say that there's the state government right? It's supposed to provide education. So the way that I know the current New Jersey Constitution is worded, it would appear that the state government is, supposed to provide education. Now my position is that I do support local control. So I would want, I support decentralization. So you have local governments. I mean, I presume that, if a libertarian were to be elected governor, public schools will not disappear. I mean, that's not, at a local level, there still will be public schools. And the question was about state legislation. So I certainly would oppose state legislation mandating, right, all public schools. This is for all public schools in New Jersey, that the parents should be informed by their teacher of the change in the how their children are, should be, what types of pronouns, or how they should be viewed as far as gender is concerned. So yeah, I don't believe there should be a state law saying that the teachers should be informing parents throughout the state and on all public schools of that. That is all.
Yeah. So I know your position. What I'm questioning is, first of all, local governments are still governments. I guess well, I'm confused, and I get it. I get decentralization as an aim, and I believe in more decentralized government as well. I'm a somewhat anarchist leftist. I like decentralization generally good, but that doesn't make you not believe in government intervention. You just care which government is intervening, right? So what is I understand decentralization should, but these are very different claims. That either public education shouldn't exist and therefore no policy is necessary because they shouldn't be ones making policy on this, or public education should exist or can exist and just a different government other than state should be doing it. Very, very different claims, kind of both vaguely libertarian, but very different to kind of sink my teeth into. I don't believe in either. I think as humans, we form states, right, that put together some common welfare as well as common defense that can be justified on a very basic level in terms of efficacy, and especially children, if you're a capitalist, children simply don't fit into the capitalist model because they are not autonomous beings that can advocate for themselves or engage in a free market. And therefore they must have some outside of market engagement to grow up and then become autonomous agents that can engage in a market. So I guess what conceivable ideology could justify, if we do have a polity, if we do have a society, if we do have moral or legal obligations to each other, not having any type of obligations to people that themselves cannot be autonomous units.
So you mentioned moral obligation for one person to another, right? And that existing or not is irrelevant to the state intervening in that. So the state doesn't exist to force morals on other people or forcing people to be charitable to other people. And as a libertarian, as both of us being libertarians believe that, well, I'm a libertarian minarchist, which means that I believe there should be the least amount of government possible, which means the only government that should exist is to protect our natural rights. They don't give us anything. They don't give us rights. And they also hold on, let me finish. And certainly the state doesn't have, shouldn't have the authority to impose force of arbitrary morality. So as far as children are concerned, children are in the care of their parents, which means parents have the right to make decisions for them. They have the right to choose their education. They have the right to know what's best for them until they become adults, and then they can make those autonomous decisions. The state has no, shouldn't have any authority to decide which morals are the correct ones and which decisions are the correct ones, which choices for your children are the correct ones. So as libertarians, we don't think the state should be involved at all. And just to let you
that have no parents don't have any protection in society.
Of course they do. I think communities with say there was no state, which again I don't support, I'm a minarchist, but say the state didn't exist. I do think as human beings we have the obligation to each other to take care of each other, but we don't need the state to be able to do that. We don't need the state to tell us what that obligation is. And I think that's where Yes, I personally believe that, but I don't believe the state should force that morality and force those choices. Taxes is another example. Like, I think you should be charitable. I think you should share your resources. I think you should help your neighbor and your community and children that need homes and pets that need homes. But I don't think the state has the right to take those resources for you and decide what's charitable for you.
Can you describe the dividing line between which portions of your morality you're willing to enforce in a state and which ones you're not? Because you're making a distinction between the state can enforce natural rights, which I presume to be rights like bodily autonomy, bodily integrity, right, etc., which are like fundamental based on like an Ayn Randian model. That's my understanding of like where libertarians draw natural rights. And then just your other morals. From my view, my morals are all equal. If I believe something is a moral obligation, right, I can apply them consistently. You have a distinction between moral obligations you think a state should engage in and moral obligations you don't. Either way, you're enforcing moral obligations. You just think one is strong enough to enforce by a state. So what makes those rights enforceable by a state and what makes them not?
So natural rights isn't morality. First of all, that's the
What's
distinction.
right if not a moral obligation?
Natural rights are not given to you by a state. You have them by virtue of being a human being, which is your right to yourself, your right to property. That's it.
Yeah, but those are moral, right?
No, that's not morality.
What does morality mean to you? Because from my view, it's what is good or what is bad, what we ought to do or what we ought not.
And I also just want to let you know that you have one minute left. You have 1 minute left. So if you want to sum up your argument,
natural rights
or
are obviously moral rights. Literally, no libertarian theorist disagrees with that. Because they give you moral obligations. You have a moral obligation to not violate natural rights. I don't know what conceivable conception of natural rights you have opposite of that.
Are you done with your summation?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next person or the next question. Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us.
No worries.
All right. So the next guest just disappeared.
Okay.
And then let me scroll up for any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions, just comments, and there was too many comments to kind of address them all. But Vic, you didn't say much during that, but do you have any comments towards it?
Right. No, well, no. I mean, those were all interesting questions. Yeah, the children. I mean, they're not adults. I mean, they're just really quickly, and of course, they do come under the responsibility of the parents, and because they're not adults, that they cannot give, informed, conscientious consent, and because they're children, right? We don't allow children to sort of make adult decisions. Children do not drive, right? So they're not adults. So that's the way I see it. And they are, and the parents are the parents, and they are not, so I definitely separate children from adults in a sense that individual decisions that children make as opposed to the ones that adults make. I mean, when you're an adult, you can make all kinds of decisions that are consensual. When you're a child, that's different, right? So when people talk about negative liberties, right, they talk about adults. They're not talking about children. So I definitely want to make that distinction that between children and adults. That's all I wanted to say.
And he actually did mention that children, when he mentioned orphans, that orphans can't take care of themselves. They're not autonomous. But then he turns around and says that parents don't have that control to make those decisions for him. But I didn't get a chance to address that particular thing he said with him because he ran out of time. And that is why I limit guests because we would just have ended up going in a circle and other people have questions. So it's not, I limit everybody to 10 minutes so that you contribute, but then also we move on, right?
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk about... okay, we did have a question by Nico on my live. I love all you had to say on your campaign platform about why abolish ICE. I don't know if you're referring to Vic or me, because abolish ICE is not on my platform, because as a state assembly member, I wouldn't have the power to do that. But Vic, if you want to answer that
Well,
question.
first of all, I don't mention anything on my campaign platform on abolishing ICE. That's not governor does not have that power to abolish ICE. So that goes without saying. Now, what I do support is enforcing natural rights of individuals, right? So if the person is nonviolent, right, the person has not committed any kind of violent crimes, the person is should be allowed to work. I mean, this is what is the only reason why we have all the undocumented immigrants, and I mentioned this before, and this is on my campaign platform, is because of the federal policies that severely restrict the ability of people to legally come to the U.S. Because the only way you can legally come to the U.S. is through family members and through the restricted work visas, which explains why, for example, 42% of all farmers are undocumented immigrants. That's the reality. So the federal government actually has the policies that incentivizes undocumented immigration. That, alongside with what Bill Clinton signed into Law 96, which prohibited people from getting legalized through their family members and their employers. And that has actually encouraged even more undocumented immigrants. This is why you see after 1996, the number of undocumented immigrants that there is, whether it's 20 million, whatever that number is. These are the federal policies that have encouraged this, the increase in a number of documented immigrants. And the people who say that, well, we should now deport them, don't forget, those are the policies that in members of Congress and the presidents ever since Bill Clinton were supporting. So now that they have, support these policies, they have quote unquote solution, which is deportations. But wouldn't make sense to make it more easier for people to legally come to the United States. But clearly, as all these presidents and all these members of Congress have demonstrated, they're against it. They do not want more people to legally come to the United States. And that is the reality. So what I'm saying is that we should have background checks for people that are coming to the state of New Jersey, right? Mentioned Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 does not grant the federal government, Congress, the power to control immigration. It only Article 1, Section 8 only mentions naturalization, which is citizenship. And the people who wrote the Declaration of Independence, just to be clear, right? I mean, we know Thomas Jefferson, right? One of the grievances against the British government was the British government was trying to restrict immigration. So why is it surprising that the word immigration is not in the Constitution? Hello, all those people, they wanted the early American Republic to have more people. Why would they want the federal government to restrict immigration? It would not have made any sense to them, right? So that's why it's not in the Constitution. And the only time the time where you start having the federal government being involved in immigration is with the Chinese Exclusion Act, where the federal government decided, no, we don't want people coming from China. And so we saw the restrictions of immigration there. The Supreme Court okayed it, said that, hey, immigrants are like foreign policy and commerce, which is ridiculous. Okay. And by the way, immigrants are not invaders either. People say invasion, because that would mean that people that have been born here, that their ancestors were invaders, which is completely ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, this whole claim. So what I'm saying is that if somebody, just like over 100 years ago, when you could, when it was easier to come to the United States, if you're coming the early 1900s, allow those people to come, allow them to work. That's it. And if they're not violent, and if you look at the ICE statistics, right, you have only 7% of all the people that they have arrested have been convicted of violent crimes. 65% have not been convicted of any crimes at all. What I'm saying is that allow peaceful people to work. Okay, allow them to work. Don't get rid of them, because this is going to hurt our economy. Like I said, 42% of all farmers are undocumented immigrants. Does it really make sense to get rid of them and hurt the American people and hurt the American economy? Doesn't make any sense at all. So if you're coming here to the state of New Jersey, you should there needs to be background checks. Make sure that those people who are coming here are not violent, and when those background checks are through, they get those people get processed, they should be allowed to work. That is my position on when it comes to immigration.
So there are a couple questions. I do want to add my 2 cents to what you said. We talk about this a lot. And the reason why they asked that question is, for some reason, I forgot that I put a background on TikTok that literally says abolish ICE on it. So that's why they asked that question. But as far as it being part of my campaign, it isn't, because if when I get into the state assembly, I don't really have control to abolish ICE, because it is a federal a federal criminal organization. But as Vic stated, the federal government does not have the authority to control immigration, only naturalization. So the existence of ICE is actually unconstitutional, and that's why it should be abolished, because they don't even have the right to exist. So just to kind of sum up why you would support that. So right now, from my perspective of it being an unconstitutional federal organization, because they don't have the authority to do that, everything they're doing is criminal. Rounding people up, detaining them, throwing them in alligator, Alcatraz, or whatever they're doing is 100% illegal because it's unconstitutional. But the question this person has is, I think it should be easier, agreeing with what you said, that it should be easier. What are your thoughts on integration, though? So should farm workers, etc., be learning English, or things like that? So as far as like cultural integration, which is actually something that I hear a lot, that's actually what people are worried about when you hear these people that are very, very anti-immigration against, Latin Americans or even Muslims. What they're worried about is that those people will bring their culture here and change the way the United States is in our American culture. So what do you say to that?
Well, and thank you for that question. Yes, what I say to that is that look at the American culture today. I mean, is there such thing? I mean, yes, we can talk about certain dishes that are quote unquote American, but they have roots in other cultures. Look at pizza. I mean, what is our American culture is part of the influences of other cultures. So when immigrants come here and they bring other cultures and they add to our American culture, I think that's a good thing. Right now, if there's a concern, because that has been the history of the United States, right? We're not just like, we're really a combination of influences from cultures all over the world, and I think that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, right? Who doesn't like pizza? Now, the reality is that if you look at people who have come from other countries, over a century ago and whatnot, yes, we've had German language newspapers, we had newspapers in other languages, and back then, over 100 years ago, people who were born here in America saying, well, those people will never integrate, that those people will never learn the language, and that's just not true. They have learned the language. All those things have happened. So that's the reality. And so
this person's response to what you're saying is that they don't want certain cultural norms that come from perhaps impoverished or less educated countries to come here. And I hear this a lot when I talk to people, particularly when it comes to Muslims. When people are raised in a Muslim country, they're raised to view women in a dehumanizing way. They feel like women don't have rights. They feel like crossing their bodily autonomy. I don't know if I can say that on TikTok Live, the R word. I don't want to get banned. They feel like they have the authority to do that if the woman is doing something arbitrarily, immoral or whatever, talking about morality earlier. So that people are worried that people from these countries that have a completely different worldview are going to come here, maybe get elected, maybe influence the culture, and then change it for the worse. But I will say that when the Irish and the Italians were coming here, they were considered to be uneducated and dirty and poor, and they were taking everybody's jobs, and they were kind of like, a poison to society. And now, 100 years later or whatever, now they're, at least in this area in the Northeast, they're considered to be like the people who made this area. Their culture and their customs and their their way of being is how you live up here. So I think it's just people are afraid of things they don't understand, and a little bit of racism, a little bit of bigotry, maybe a lot of bigotry is involved in those types of thinking. But go ahead, Vic.
No, thank you, Lana. I absolutely agree. I mean, if you look at the way the immigrants were portrayed in some of the cartoons from over 100 years ago, the people that were coming from Ireland, they were, stereotyped a certain way. The people coming from Eastern Europe, they were stereotyped a certain way. If people coming from Italy were not considered to be white. I mean, they're all people who were here. There were plenty of people who hated them, right? Hated them for being Catholic, hated them for being Jewish, hated them for all kinds of reasons. And people, look, I mean, this is no different than today. If there's a concern about certain values that are being brought in that kind of run country to our laws, right, run counter to the the natural rights, right? We already have law. We do have laws against that. We have laws against that. that should be treated just like anything else. And I'm
And I,
thinking
and I think that's part of the problem. And
Yeah.
I want to wrap this up really quick because I want to answer Michael's question. If you're still here, Michael. When I hear Europeans talk about this specifically, they'll say, "Oh, this person, sexually assaulted my kid, and they didn't get punished for it." What people are actually complaining about when it comes to these immigrants committing crimes is not the act of immigrating to a country; it's the fact that their local police force is not cracking down on crimes that they're already illegal. So if, for example, people complain about Muslims. A Muslim comes here and brings their value system of women, and they see a woman who's dressed provocatively from their perspective, and they decide to assault her. That is a crime, and they should be punished in this country. They should be thrown in jail. And the problem, at least in Europe, is that they're not doing those things. And on top of not punishing these criminals, they're hiding the statistics. So it seems like the criminals are not actually the immigrants that are coming here. And it feeds into racism, because it feeds into the idea that these people are dangerous and inherently dangerous, I should say. And it just actually perpetuates the idea. So that's why if an immigrant comes here and commits a crime, they should be punished, period. End of story. There's no other solution to that. But I want to switch gears because Michael has more of an internal Libertarian Party question. So I'm going to put it up here on the StreamYard. Libertarians have been trying to win for decades. What evidence do you have supporting the Libertarian Party will result in something tangible rather than wasting resources? And I know Michael. He's a member of the Libertarian Party. So first of all, voting for someone you believe in is never a wasted vote. We talk about wasted votes all the time. You vote how you believe. This idea that you can waste votes, or that libertarians or independent candidates are stealing votes from the two-party system. The Republicans and Democrats are entitled to nothing. They aren't entitled to votes. They aren't entitled to support. And they also are not entitled to tax dollars, which legally they are. The two governor candidates have already spent millions of dollars in tax money. They aren't actually entitled to any of those things. They aren't entitled to your attention or your vote. But libertarians do win. They're mostly successful locally, city council, mayor, school board, things like that. The higher seats are full of corruption, and the two-party system has made laws to make it more difficult, which I could talk about for hours. I'm not going to do that right now, but raising the thresholds, making it so that third parties can't get attention because they want people to be able to have the illusion of choice between the two parties. But I talked about this when I went as a guest with the Virginia Party last week. I don't know when that was, is that when you're volunteering with the party, or you're running for office as a libertarian or as a third party candidate, instead of having the mindset of, I'm going to win, I'm going to be the first libertarian to be governor, I'm going to whatever, which I would love to be alive for the first libertarian president or first libertarian governor. But you have to change your perspective to candidates. Running for office is the only opportunity a libertarian activist has where people are running to ask you questions. They're running to hear your opinion about things. They're running to hear about your platform. There is no other situation that comes up organically where someone is going to be asking about your philosophy, asking about libertarianism, asking you questions where it gives you the opportunity to talk about libertarianism. It is the quickest, I would say it's the biggest platform a libertarian can have to talk about libertarianism. And that is never a waste of resources. I'll give you an example. Last week, or a couple weeks ago, Vic and I were at the Sussex County Fair. We talked to somebody for a good 45 minutes. He had awesome questions. They were said in good faith. They were tough questions, but said in good faith, unlike our guest earlier. And they were said in good faith. And by the end of the conversation, he shook Vic's hand and said, "You have my vote." We converted him on the spot. But that wouldn't have happened if he didn't walk past the libertarian booth and saw two libertarian candidates. Another example, this is when I was running for Congress last year. I went into a coffee shop, getting a drink before I moved on to my next thing. And this guy said, "Oh, you're Lana Leguía. You're the one who's running for District 7, right?" And I said, "Yes." And we talked for a few minutes. He was working. He was an employee. So he couldn't talk for very long. But there is no other organic situation where somebody's going to be like, "Hey, you're running for office," and then ask me a million questions. It is actually, I think it's one of the priorities the Libertarian Party should have for resources, because candidates, especially candidates in higher offices, like because Vic Kaplan's running for governor, he automatically gets attention. He automatically gets invited to town halls. He's been invited to 2 town halls coming up. You have an excuse to go to these tabling events. You might get invited to debates. You're going to get media attention. You're going to have people looking at your website. And that's why, as a Libertarian member, you should be very careful who is running in your higher seats. You have to make sure that their platforms are actually libertarian, because they will get an automatic spotlight. And that is the best way to spread the libertarian philosophy and introduce it to new people, is through candidates. So just went on a little rant there, Michael, but I hope that answers your question. And that I mean, it's never a waste of resources from my perspective to support candidates, because that is how you spread liberty from my perspective.
Right. No, thank you, Lana. That was a great response. I also want to make it also add that a lot of the things that people take for granted came as a result of people running outside of the two-party system and bringing those ideas forward, and that's how, in many cases, those ideas were adopted into law. Yes, libertarians do win, certainly plenty on the local level, and they have been elected to certainly school boards and councils. Yeah, you have libertarians being elected as mayors. But I think the important part also is that the ideas that libertarians bring forth, in the past, some of them have not been considered to be even acceptable by most Americans. But yet, because of the advocacy of those ideas by libertarians, some of them have been adopted into law, and they have become accepted by the society at large because of the advocacy of those ideas by the libertarians in the past. So I definitely see a benefit of libertarians running for office. Some of the ideas I advocate, I hope they get adopted at a local level. I mean, this is not, I hear about people in Jersey City and other areas. They're all thinking about topics such as changing some of the zoning restrictions. Right. This is a topic that is not just for New Jersey. This is a topic for people who live in other states as well. Because I mean, there are plenty of people who do want affordable housing that will not raise their taxes. Right. So I do think that libertarians have certainly a role in bringing these salient ideas that a lot of people do care about.
Yeah, and I try to remind libertarians of what our purpose is, why we exist. And I'm not even talking about the party, because the party is obviously a political party, a partisan political party, so their objective is to run candidates. But as a libertarian, small L, what is your objective? And most people will say, I want to spread libertarianism and spread liberty so that everyone can experience it, or so that I as an individual can have freedom and liberty. Well, the best way to do that is to run for office and have the opportunity to talk about it to potentially thousands of people. So it's just a change in perspective of like, what is your goal for running for office as a third party candidate? Is it to win, which, yes, that's always in the back of your head, win and dismantle the system from the inside. But really, you should be focusing on, I need to talk to as many people about liberty and about libertarianism as I can during my time. My phone is about to die, and I cannot plug it in the way it's like kind of set up. And also, we went over an hour. I try to do these for an hour. So unless you have anything else to say, Vic, we'll just end it there.
No, thank you, Lana. I don't really have anything to add other than, please feel free to visit our websites and volunteer, donate. And it's been a real pleasure discussing all these topics today with the viewers. A lot of good questions, and it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, and we're going to try to go live most days at 7 p.m. We have lives, so I don't know if we can do it every single day. But I think we can, at least I can do it every day at 7 p.m. So if you have questions or you want to join the live, shoot me a message and you can be a guest tomorrow or some other day during the week at 7. All right, see you later.
Thank you for your questions. Bye-bye.